People don't really understand male psychology. We think that we do, and it makes sense that we would think that because it's typically in our society we see men and women not understanding each other, but it's typically understood men know how men think, women know how women think. But the problem with that theory is that people don't realize men have brains that are wired in such a way that they're not always as aware of their own feelings. I mean, everyone knows. You ask a man like, "Hey, what are you feeling right now? Open up about your feelings." And a lot of guys won't. And people will give explanations for this, like there's social reasons that they don't feel safe, and that might be true. But there's a whole neurological level to this that people don't realize, and that is far, far more influential than anyone would probably assume just at a glance. Well, I mean, actually, it's neurology, and neurology affects everything. So anyone who understands it would know that it's going to have an impact on your behavior and your thought processes. But people don't understand what the neurological differences are. And actually, let me just pull this up real quick. Okay, so in the male brain, you've got we've got a lot of sections, but for the purposes of this, you've got two major sections. Logical and, let's say E mode. I don't want it to be emo. You got the logic center of the brain, and you have the emotion center of the brain. And between these two, there is no direct connection. None whatsoever. So men think and men feel, but they cannot logically articulate what they are feeling. There's no direct connection between those two things. So what that means on a practical level is when you ask a guy to explain his feelings, he can't. He can usually explain superficially, like, what are you feeling right now? I'm happy, I'm angry, I'm sad. But when you start asking questions like, well, why are you feeling that? It's not just a matter of social training, of life experience, of cultural thing. It's not even like people talk about how a lot of guys deal with relationships where they'll open up about their feelings and then women will weaponize their feelings against them, which is a completely garbage behavior. But ultimately, even without that, men still would not really be able to articulate their feelings in the same way that women do. Well, because actually, let me just point this out. In the female brain, you got one section. One section that controls logic and emotions both. It's all here. So in the female brain, of course, women can describe their feelings. They can explain their feelings because it's the same thing to them. In the male brain, it's not the same. And there's actually, because there's no connection, we can't explain it. We can't really even understand our own feelings beyond that superficial level. Like, what is it? And just as an example, because I tend to think in abstract terms, but I know some people need more concrete examples. Like, suppose you have a guy, he gets a compliment from someone, but he's mad about it. You might think, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you be mad about it? So you ask him, what are you upset about? They just paid you a compliment. And he was working, say he was doing a job at work, and people complimented him for, say, how quick and efficiently he got the job done, which is good. That's great. But he wasn't focused on trying to be quick. He was focused on doing the job properly, on doing the most detailed and accurate job he could. But nobody paid attention to the accuracy, which was what he was trying to focus on. They paid attention to how quick he was on it. Oh, we're amazed you got this done so quickly. It's like, I don't care about doing it quickly. I want you to recognize that I did it well. But they don't recognize that. And so he gets mad about it. But then you ask him and he can't explain why, because he's not connected one side to the other in there. So yeah, ultimately, men don't really understand their own. And my camera's refocusing, and that's weird, but I'm just going to keep going. Men don't really fully understand their own emotions. And this is actually a much bigger problem for understanding male psychology than you might think, because it's not just about emotions. There's another element that people don't think about, which is I'm not going to use the board this time, but the processing center in the brain that controls decision making is directly linked to emotions. In fact, I think it's actually controlled by the emotion center. There was a study about a man who was in I want to say a car accident. Don't quote me on that. This was years ago. I don't remember the details of it. I just remember the story was that he suffered an accident and it destroyed the emotion center of his brain. Completely destroyed it. He literally could not feel emotions. And he lost the ability to make decisions. He literally could not make decisions. You give him a piece of paper and a pen, you say, write your name down. He writes his name down. You give him a piece of paper and 2 pens and say, grab a pen, write your name down. He'll say, which pen do I use? Well, just pick one. How? Which one should I pick? Like he literally could not make the decisions in his brain. And the reason he couldn't do that was because the way emotions work, we think that emotions, typically we think of emotions in the superficial sense of what I'll call the big name emotions, right? So happiness, sadness, anger, confusion, whatever, the things we can really apply the big names to. But we don't think about the underlying reasons for those emotions. It's like the example I was giving earlier about the guy who's upset because people complimented him, but complimented a different thing than what he wanted them to notice. Or perhaps an even better example, you've seen all those tests online where somebody will say, like, pick your favorite color and we'll tell you what your personality is. Obviously, those are totally a load of bunk, right? There's way more to your personality than just what your favorite color is. But there is something to be said about how your favorite color relates to the rest of your personality. For instance, the color blue. Blue itself is a neurologically calming color. When you look at the color blue, it actually calms your brain down, which is why a lot of people need to get outdoors more and look at the blue sky. I want to say this similar thing about green, but I don't actually know the full neurological effects of green. I need to study that more. But red is an exciting color. It literally excites your brain's neurons. So if your favorite color is red versus if your favorite color is blue, you're probably going to have different personality qualities because what your brain is inclined toward, what it prefers, is different, right? People who have the favorite color is blue tend to want to either make situations calmer or to be in a calmer environment, as opposed to red people who want more action, more excitement, more dynamism in their life. And again, it's a massive oversimplification. There's a lot more to it, but that's one of the little things that, together with 10,000 other little things, all build up and add up together to form those big emotions that we think about. It's the underlying values and principles in your brain. And so if you don't understand the emotional, if you cannot articulate what's going on in the emotion center of your brain, you can't articulate those underlying values. And if you can't articulate that, you cannot fully understand your own decision-making process. That's why people don't understand male psychology, because men do not understand why they make the decisions that they do. And it's not a cultural or it's not a thing about proper training or education. It's just our brains are not wired to do that. I literally have an easier time looking at someone else, analyzing them, and figuring out, I think I know why they're upset, or I think I know why they're happy, even though the situation is confusing. They shouldn't be happy, but they are. They shouldn't be upset, but they are. I have an easier time figuring out that than I do figuring out my own brain. Being like, why am I upset about this? I shouldn't be upset. It's easier to say that about someone else than myself, because analyzing my own emotions internally is more difficult than observing an outside person and studying them, because it's just the way my brain's wired. I can't change it. It's just how I am. Now, I'm better than most guys due to having learned a lot of tricks to self-analysis. One big thing I do is I write stories. I write fictional characters, and I've learned how to, it's going to sound weird saying this, but I've learned how to objectify myself, to view myself from an outside lens as if I were a character in a story, and then sort of take apart my own emotions from that external perspective. That helps me, but not everyone can do that. A lot of guys don't really have any mechanisms for self-analysis. And of course, a lot of guys struggle with therapy because therapy is all about talking about your emotions, and our brains just aren't wired to do that. So what are our brains wired for? Let's talk. Okay, so let's just start from the ground up. We're going to do a little game I call Build a Human. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to analyze like the basic survival needs and say, if we're going to build a person, what would we need to give them in order to make them survive? And hopefully this can make a lot more sense how men work. So your basic need is survival. What do you need to do for that? Like, how do you live forever? Obviously, that's a trick question. You can't. However, as a species, we can survive forever by having kids. So how do we do that? And don't go there, you perverts. That's not what I'm saying. This is not that kind of video. What do you need in order to raise children and to keep them alive? People say you need a village to raise a child. You don't. There are many, many examples of people like living during the colonial era on the frontier, mother, father, children, out on a ranch or whatever. Sorry about that. You don't need a whole community. You need a mother, a father, and children. That's all you need for a family. That is the core of human survival and reproduction. So, all that you need has to be, that's bad, all that you need has to be contained in these two people. Every instinct, every physical quality, physical, mental, emotional, everything has to be inside these two. So, I'm actually going to start with females because it makes more sense to start there, but this is ultimately about male psychology, so don't get sidetracked in this. Obviously, the woman carries the child. You got the baby. So, she handles the physical needs. It makes sense because when she gets pregnant, her body's like, oh, let's start shifting all the stuff, hormonal changes. Let's start making milk to feed the baby. Let's start doing all that stuff. And she's also the one who ends up nursing the child and taking care of the child after the baby's born. Now, while she's doing this, there's a physical strain being placed on her body because this here, and I just keep drawing circles over and over, but this here, so first trimester, there's hormonal shifts. Things level out in about the second trimester, but then third trimester, the baby's gotten so big at that point that it's just taking a physical toll on the mother to carry the child around. So during that whole period, she cannot do as much work as she could before getting pregnant. And afterward, of course, she's going to be nursing the baby, she's going to be feeding, taking care of it, and doing other stuff related to that. So that means that all of the work goes right here. The man has to provide for himself. My mouse is messing up, excuse me. Himself, his wife, his child, and because, of course, we're trying to keep the species alive, we need to have at least 2 kids. And since we're talking about ye old colonial era, you don't know that all your kids are going to survive, so you're going to need 3 kids, 4 kids. Let's say 50% survival rate. Now, that's not super accurate. It differs from place to place and time to time, but we're just going to say that's a pretty average thing for simplicity's sake. And some families were significantly larger than that, so the point could actually be said that many could provide for even more. But that's 6 people. Actually, you know what? Let's do it as, no, hold on. Let's do it as tally marks. That's 6 people right there. A man has to be able to provide for many times more than his own needs. He has to be able to do the physical work to do that, but he also has to be mentally wired to want to do that. People always talk about men are stronger than women, but people are missing the point about why men are stronger. We're wired to be built to use that strength to provide. It's supposed to be a tool. It's not just oh, look at me, I'm tough and I'm strong. Like, I used to be really self-conscious about the fact that I'm kind of scrawny, and I was super pumped when for years I worked at a warehouse job, and I actually got to be pretty strong and pretty buff. And then, of course, I quit that job and I moved on, and now I'm back to being skinny and scrawny again. But the thing is, I don't need to be super buff. I do stuff with computers. I do stuff online. I do stuff with writing and content creation. I don't need all of that. So it doesn't bother me anymore because now I understand why that strength exists in the first place. Now, it is still wired in my psychology. I want to be strong because I'm a male, but I know I don't need it like I thought I did. But men, they're wired to provide. Men are wired to take care of their families, take care of their children, and take care of both. Let's see, what was the whole list I put together? There's providing for their needs such as food and shelter. So I'll say provision. You need to actually keep them safe from threats, whether it be other human beings or, wild animals or even just the elements, which kind of, honestly, these two things are kind of just two sides of the same coin. Providing for needs is really what this is all about. And then beyond that, men also have mental needs, which overlap and connect with these, but the biggest one, that's funny. I remember I'm sorry. This is so screwed up. My mouse needs to be replaced. Men need to do things well. Because the better you do things, at least in a natural survival environment, the more likely you are to survive, the more likely your family is to survive. So men strive to do things with excellence. I said perfection because it's more alliterative this way. But men strive to do things with excellence because if they're not doing things with excellence, the likelihood of them and their family surviving in the long run is massively reduced. And the last one, frankly, this one, it shouldn't even be on the list, but it's more relevant in the modern day, so I'm going to include it anyway. And that is men need to do something that has a purpose. Now, when you're doing all three of these, that is your purpose. You're taking care of your family. You're keeping yourself alive, right? This contains enough purpose. But nowadays, a lot of guys don't have kids. A lot of guys don't have wives. A lot of guys don't have jobs that they're working that they actually care about. It's basically just numbers on a bank account statement. And so a lot of guys are lacking that. So all of this is ultimately connected to one central... Yeah, let me just wipe that out. We're switching to male psychology. There's one central thing that all of this connects to. If you get nothing else from this video, get this. Men are wired to work. A man who is not working on something will never be happy. Now, work can come in 1,000 different forms. Most of the work that I do is intellectual. I write stuff. I record stuff. I solve paradoxes in my free time and whatever. It doesn't have to be physical work. For some guys, it's more physical. Some guys, it's more mental. But ultimately, you need to be doing something as a man. If you are not doing something and doing something that matters to you, you will not be happy. You just won't be. Now, before I move on, I want to really harp on this point a lot because this cannot be overstated. A lot of people talk about different elements of male psychology and what men want and what men think. Not enough people, and I've heard a few that are. I have heard a few, but not enough people are talking about this. Men need to work. A man cannot be stable mentally and emotionally unless he is working on something. And I could literally just keep saying that same thing for like an hour, and I don't think anyone would get enough of the point of how imperative I consider this, because we're living in a modern society where everything's about convenience, about doing as little work as possible. Guys want to do hard work. There was a story about a dude who went to college. So the story was he managed to work through depression by winning Dark Souls, the video game called Dark Souls. So he played the game once. Apparently he drifted into the end game, which is something you can do. I've not actually played Dark Souls myself, but he wandered from the starting area into the ending area, and he got completely destroyed, and he was really annoyed, so he just kind of put the game down, didn't pick it up. Went to college, got back, was dealing with depression, picked the game back up, and then he started playing, and he binge played this for 2 months or something. I don't remember. I got to go back and find that video. But he went through and he eventually won it. It was a very, very difficult game, and he eventually got through and he won the entire game. And when he won it, he said he wasn't depressed anymore. And that sounds like such a silly thing. He won a video game and it cured his depression. Well, he wasn't doing anything that felt like it was truly testing him, challenging him. He wasn't proving himself in any meaningful way. By winning a game that was incredibly difficult, especially for someone who'd never played those kinds of games before. There's a whole genre that's emerged out of the Dark Souls, or they call them Souls-like now. But that going through something like that for the first time is an incredible test of your willingness to keep on going. Like most games, someone said the thing about video games is most games are designed for you to win them, right? They're not made for you to lose, because the game makers want you to win. They want you to experience the whole game, but they also want you to enjoy the game. And typically people enjoy winning more than losing. But this is not a game that was made that way. This was not made for you to just level your character up a couple times and breeze through. It was designed to test you and to really, really challenge you. And by challenging yourself, you prove yourself internally. You're proving it not to others, but to your own mind that I can overcome these challenges. And by doing that, he cured his depression. And that's obviously not a cure for everyone's depression. There's a lot of different reasons why people struggle with depression. But for a lot of guys who are not dealing with a chronic clinical depression, but just depressed at life because they're not doing anything they feel is meaningful, challenging yourself in that sort of way is one of the best ways to at least get yourself up out of that and get yourself moving towards something bigger and something better. Is that? Oh, here we go. Now, there's another element that can kind of be derived from all of this. So, in order to do work, you have to have ability to do work, or to put it in simple terms, you have to have power. Power is not control over other people. Power is, in its simplest terms, the ability to do stuff. That's power. Actually, you know what? There we go. Power is the ability to accomplish things. So the best example I've ever come up with for this is my grandfather basically built his own house, pretty much by himself. I think he got help for a few things like laying the foundation and doing like electrical wiring. But he built the house, he did the plumbing, he did the roofing and the shingles and the walls and the insulation. He built his own house. And it took him a long time to do it. What does it take to build your own house solo? Or even with a team, but solo in this case because, you're the one doing all the work. Well, so first you need, let's just start with the basics. First you need physical strength because you're laying boards, hammering nails, carrying packs of shingles up onto roofs. I helped my dad reshingle a roof one time, and those things are freaking heavy. Like, you wouldn't think a pack of shingles, if you've never picked up one of those things, holy crap, those things are heavy. Now, again, I'm scrawny. I'm sure guys who do a lot of physical labor don't find them quite as heavy, but still. So you need the physical strength to do the job. You also need to know what you're doing. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase before, knowledge is power. Well, yeah, it's true. Knowledge gives you the means to know how to do things properly in order to get the job done. You also need things like money because you've got to be able to afford the materials you're using. And from what I understand, my grandpa used some of the word he used was recycled from other projects, or he bought recycled wood from other people. So it wasn't as expensive as if he had done it with fresh materials, but it still cost a bit of money to do. Of course, back then things were way cheaper. You also have to work, and again, I don't know how long it took him, months probably. And you have to have the mental fortitude to keep working for that whole period of time until you see the project done. Now, this thing is actually, it contains it in the name itself. Willpower, power to see it through. And that's horrible handwriting. And there's other kinds of power as well. I mean, especially now in this day and age of social media, there's things like popularity, social media influencers. Yeah, let's just do that. I don't care. My handwriting's getting worse. Popularity and charisma, and I'm sure people can mention other types as well. I'm not going to give an exhaustive list. This is just for an example. You need power in order to accomplish tasks. Men want power. When you say it like that, it makes it sound like supervillains, but it is true. Men want to have power, but it's not because we want to control people. It's because we want to be able to accomplish meaningful tasks. And not just the present task. That's the thing a lot of people don't necessarily think about. You need power and money. Like, if I had money, the biggest relief would be I don't have to worry about future expenses. What if a car breaks down? What if a medical bill hits? I don't want to be some multi-billionaire who can afford, an Audi or a mansion or something. But I want to have enough money that I don't have to worry about it in the future. That if I have a need that requires money, I can deal with it. I want to be strong in case I got to lift some stuff. I want to know how to do stuff in case some problem comes along I'm not expecting. I want these things so that I can use it to fix problems in my life and other people's lives. That's just how my brain is wired. Now, going back to what I was saying before about purpose, though, unfortunately, in the modern day and age, a lot of guys seek the power without the purpose, and then they end up going off and becoming crazy people, which is why you see so many of these rich dudes acting stupid, because at that point, they've reached a stage in their life where they're just accumulating more money or accumulating more power just for the sake of it. They're not actually applying it to anything. Now, there's one more thing to say about power, which is people who are strong, men who are strong, and who do things well, are confident. And confidence comes from competence. That was not meant to be alliterative in any way. That's just how the words happen to work out. When men are competent at things, when men are strong, when men are capable, They are confident in their ability. Now, a lot of people think confidence is, or a lot of people think that arrogance is overconfidence, and that's not actually true. I mean, it is true sort of, but it's kind of true in reverse. Arrogance is confidence without competence. It's undeserved confidence. You can have someone who's the most confident person in the world say a dude who says, I can beat anyone in the world in a fist fight. Is that arrogance? Can he actually do it? Because if he can do it, that's not arrogance. That's just the facts. Now, that's going to seem like arrogance to people who look at him from the outside and think, man, you're full of yourself. But if he can actually do it, no, it's not arrogance at all. But the question is, does your competence match your confidence level? Because, actually, yeah, let me just do it this way. Because the thing is, if your confidence is here and your competence is here, this is the degree of your arrogance. If your competence is here and your confidence is here, this is, what's the inverse of arrogance? I guess that's self-esteem issues, thinking you're not as good as you actually are. But arrogance is only the confidence that exceeds your competence level. But this actually leads into something else that's interesting, because arrogant people also tend to be highly aggressive. And there is this myth that men are naturally aggressive. Men are not naturally aggressive. As a matter of fact, if you look at nature, aggression is a fear response. Look at any creature in nature. Anything from wolves to bees to humans to creatures of the sea, sharks or whatever. Now, let me be clear about something. When I'm talking about aggression, I'm not talking about predatory, like animal predatory behavior. If an animal is hunting in order to eat, right? If a wolf is hunting a deer, that you would look at that and say, well, okay, obviously the wolf is being aggressive because he's trying to kill the deer. But there's a distinct difference between a wolf. And if you watch these documentaries about them, you'll see it. There's a difference between a wolf that's hunting versus a wolf that is afraid and defending themselves. Like a wolf that's out on the prowl, they're not snarling. They're not, trying to trying to make themselves look bigger to scare people away. They're being very quiet. They're being very careful. They get as close as they can, and then they leap and they take down their target. That's not what you see in a moment of aggression, right? In aggression, they try to get very loud, very big, very scary in order to scare people away, scare away threats. Aggression in all creatures is a fear response. The same thing actually with bees. It's a funny story. My sister-in-law's brother, told a story about how he was out with a group of friends. He was raised on a farm, but he was in, the city hanging out with people. I don't even know what they were doing, but they were outside and they walked past a tree that had a beehive in it. And everyone else freaked out like, oh my gosh, bees. Sorry. And everyone else freaked out and were like, oh my gosh, bees, don't let them sting you. And he's walking by, he's like, what are you talking about? They're not dangerous. He went over, walked directly under the hive. Like it was right above his head. And he just stood there. And then he walked away. But he did so in a calm enough and a slow enough way that the bees didn't see him as a threat. So he did not get stung. They thought he was crazy, but it happened and it worked because he did not trigger the fear response. So he didn't trigger the stings and the aggression. Same thing with humans. Now, humans are more complicated because we don't just perceive physical danger. It's not just the physical problems that scare us. There's emotional threats. There's social threats. There's reputation threats to your job, threats to your money. And so there's a lot of different reasons why people get aggressive. But in every case I've ever seen, and this is for me personally, I have never in my life gotten aggressive and not felt threatened in some way, either my pride or my reputation. Like when somebody laughs at you and mocks you and you feel angry and you want to get aggressive because they're making you look like a fool in front of everyone. That's, what would you even call that? A social threat, a reputational threat, an ego threat? every single time I've ever seen, and I'm speaking from personal experience, I can't speak for every single person in the world, but everyone that I know that I've ever seen get aggressive in person has always been in a situation where I know they felt threatened in some way. Again, not necessarily physically, but emotional threats are perceived as much of a threat. In fact, in many cases, they're perceived as more of a threat than a physical threat is anyway. So the idea that men are naturally aggressive is not true. The reason why people think that is because of what I was saying earlier. Men are natural protectors. And if you're the protector, that means that when a threat comes around and tries to attack your family, your wife, your kids, you are the barrier. And so the threat comes at you rather than goes around you to attack them. You are wired to take on the threat. So if you perceive something as a threat, you're going to put yourself in the position to protect the people and the things that you care about, and thus you're going to get in a position where you have to be aggressive. Because, again, aggression is a fear response. And aggression isn't necessarily a bad thing in the context of protecting something important. Aggression triggers stuff in your brain that lets you be a better protector. But it needs to be applied in the right circumstances, and many people don't do that, which is why it becomes such a problem socially. Now, aggression is an interesting topic because it also leads into another similar topic, which is competition. People will say that men are naturally competitive as well. I've never been naturally competitive. I know several other men that are not. And it's actually a very funny thing when you look at men that are at the peak of their ability. When you look at men, there's a dude, I think it's Jocko. He's a content creator. He's actually a Navy SEAL. And he's done videos where he's talked about, he's focused on doing the job. He doesn't care about what people think about him. He's not interested in trying to prove himself or look good or compete with other guys. He's all about he's focused on the task, not on people's perception of him. So when you see it, and I've seen this many, many times, the most competent guys are the least competitive because they don't care about proving themselves. So where does competition come from? Well, what I was saying earlier about Dark Souls, men need something to test themselves against. And most traditionally, we would test ourselves against environmental factors. Like, again, providing for your family. You have to be able to provide food and shelter and whatever they need. But if you do not have an objective standard, the only standard you have is subjective. Right? To test yourself, the difference between an objective and a subjective standard is, hold on, let me make sure I'm fitting this in here properly. An objective standard is problem that needs to be fixed. You have something you need to solve, and you can test yourself, and how well you solve the problem is the measure of how good you are. Subjective standard can only measure itself against people. So when you do not have something meaningful to put yourself up against and say, am I good at this? Your only other option is to compare yourself to the people around you and say, how do I stack up against these guys in some arbitrary test of competency? Like, why is it that we idolize people who are good at throwing a ball through a metal ring? Or, running 100 yards with the ball in your hand. That's basketball and football. Or, hitting a puck into a net, or hitting what's some other ones? Basketball, football, hockey, baseball, hitting a ball with a stick. And I'm not mocking the people who do this. I mean, they are very good at what they do. But those skills aren't going to be applicable in any practical way. Like, as cool as anime is, I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where you're going to get a superpower that involves you hitting a baseball in order to save the world. It just doesn't happen that way. And yet we look at these people and we idolize them because they excel at stuff, even though that stuff doesn't actually matter. But because we don't have that meaningful objective standard to compare them to and compare ourselves to, it's better than nothing, I guess. We do it with video games too. I'm a big video game player, and there's a lot of people like, this is the fastest speedrunner in the world. They're the best person at speedrunning Stardew Valley, which is supposed to be a chill and relaxed game. Like, it's gotten to the point, it's fairly easy to find just the absurd levels to which this goes. And again, I don't want to mock these guys or try to insult them. That's not the purpose of this. But I just want to make it clear, that's not something that's truly meaningful work. Like, that's a substitute for what you're really supposed to be doing. And the thing is, I get it. It's hard finding meaningful work, especially nowadays. I mean, it used to be like, you made furniture for people. You saw it through every stage of the process, right? You started with the raw wood. You turned it into the furniture. You met the people you're selling it to. You sold the product to them. And then, of course, they pay you the money, which you can then hold in your hand. Everything, every step, you're a part of it. Everything you see, everything you feel. And so it's right there. You can experience it live in real time. Nowadays, you're working a job where you're 5 steps removed from the effects of your actions. You are getting paid as a number on a bank statement. Like, people don't even hold money in their hands anymore most of the time. Like, they deposit a check in your bank account, and you never actually you don't even deposit yourself anymore. It's all automatic. And so people are living lives that feel detached from their own existence in many ways. And so I get that it can be challenging. And so looking for these alternative ways to measure ourselves up and to find purpose in life is something that's necessary for a lot of guys. The problem with competition is there's only so many people who can be the best, right? There's only one person in the world at any given task who's the very best. And you want to be the very best. Everyone wants to be Ash Ketchum. Everyone, that's like the most masculine line in fiction. I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. But there can only be one, right? Highlander. There can only be one best basketball player at any given time. Or, the best of all time, the GOAT everyone's talking about. There's all the arguments about Michael Jordan and LeBron James. But the thing is, the fact that you even have to make that comparison is proof that that's not really the standard you should be using, right? What difference does it make which one of them is actually better? And why is my camera so blurry? What's going on? Okay, whatever. I don't know what that was. But with any objective task, you only need to be as good as the task requires you to be. Or, good enough for any future tasks. But you don't have to be the absolute best at absolutely everything. There's no point in doing that, because it's about accomplishing the work, not about having an ego trip, basically. And that's what a lot of the competition becomes. It really becomes about an ego trip because it isn't really meaningful work. It doesn't really fulfill you. It's just a temporary thing until, you get the world record, and then eventually someone beats it. And then the cycle begins again. It doesn't really accomplish anything. But when you're providing for yourself and your family or your friends, when you're taking care of your parents, when you're helping someone out, like, you get more value as a person from helping someone whose house was wrecked and helping them clean out their stuff from their wrecked house, salvage their life, than you would from winning any world record. Because in one case, you actually made a difference. In the other case, all you did was prove your skill at a thing that isn't particularly meaningful. Especially nowadays where the skill sets aren't really applicable in real life. I mean, back in the day, people would compete to see who's the best fighter, and if you ever went to war, sure, you could use those skills in a meaningful way, but, speedrunning video games and winning championship rings in basketball isn't exactly going to help you save the world in any way, or even save your own life. And again, I feel like I'm really bashing these people, and I don't mean to, but so much of our society has become that it needs to be addressed. Like, this is not helping. Guys need to find work that has meaning and purpose. And that is really challenging because we're not taught that we need to, and we're not taught how to do that. So, what do you need to actually find something that has purpose? Because not every one of us is going to find purpose in the same things. Me, I like storytelling. I like fiction. I run a tabletop game with my friends, and I write stories, and I'm going to be making content about storytelling and whatnot in the future. And that all has purpose to me, but not every guy can say that. Not every guy cares about that same thing. So how do you find what's meaningful and purposeful in your own life? Well, first you have to figure out what you care about. And that can be difficult for a lot of guys because we're not really given the opportunity many times to try to pursue what we want. Most of the time, the hobbies that we have we're taught that they're just silly or stupid or a waste of time. And we're taught to suppress our interests and focus on, get a job that adds to society. Because, serving burgers at McDonald's is making a huge difference in society. We're told to contribute to other people's needs rather than our own. And contributing to other people's needs is important, don't get me wrong. But we have to be able to do stuff that matters to us. And working an office job where you're processing paperwork isn't really meaningful to most people. So you need to find what your own interests are, and I can't help you with that, unfortunately. My best advice for that is simply find that thing that you gravitate toward and that you keep gravitating toward. I quit writing probably a dozen times in my life because I was not good. And I gradually got better, but I still wasn't good enough in my mind, and so I quit. And then I decided, you know what, I'll give it one more shot. And I came back. And then I quit again, and I gave it one more shot. And eventually I got to the point where I just stopped quitting because I was finally at the level I wanted to be, or at least at the level where I was good enough I didn't feel like I was failing, which is really the main thing. And if you don't know, if you have any friends, ask them, like, hey, what do you think I'm interested in? Because sometimes you might find that you don't even consciously realize what you're interested in. Yeah, and here I was saying I don't have any advice, and here I am giving advice. But you might find somebody might say, well, you talk about this particular subject all the time. Why don't you look into something with that? I've heard stories about that where people are just asking their friends, like, what do you think I should try to pursue? And they're like, dude, this is like the number one thing you're talking about every single day. Why aren't you pursuing that? And many times when it comes to things that matter to us, we can actually be less inclined to want to do them because they're so important. We don't want to risk doing it badly. This is particularly men. I don't know how much this is the case for women. I feel like it's sometimes the case, but women usually have an easier time getting over it because they don't have that same neurological wiring to want to excel at everything. And the more something matters, the more men care about excelling. So if it's the most important thing in the world, you want to do it perfect, and you can't do it perfect the first time. Like this video. This is my first full video doing content creation on YouTube. And people are going to look at it and they're going to say, wow, your camera sucks, your lighting sucks, your script and everything you're saying sucks. Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at this thinking to myself, this is a garbage video. This isn't even remotely good. But at some point or another, you have to just do the thing. And you have to just make the product or whatever it is that you're working on. Do the thing and it'll suck. And then do it anyway and keep doing it until you get good at it. Because you can't be good at something until you're at least bad at something. So you need to find the thing you care about, and you need to do the work, whether it's good or whether it's bad, because you need to be working, right? And if you can't find a thing that you genuinely care about or is the most important thing in the world, like you can't find your life's purpose, find something that matters at least a little bit to you and get yourself working on it. Get a hobby that you care about. Get a something. Because again, our brains are wired to work. And once you start working, and once you start thinking in terms of improving yourself and making yourself better and doing the things you care about, if you're struggling, that first step can help you the first step can help you make progress toward getting to the place mentally where you can start to shift your gears to the thing you really need to be doing with your life eventually. But if you're struggling mentally and struggling emotionally, the first step is to just get yourself moving. I'm not going to insult therapy and therapists. There are some times therapy really works for men, but I think one of the most critical factors that a lot of guys overlook is we need to just be doing something. Doing good work is in its own way therapy for men. Guys who are dealing with insecurities, talking about those insecurities aren't going to get rid of them. They can help you be aware of them, maybe, if you can actually get to the point where you're talking about your emotions, but confronting the thing and doing the thing you're scared of and the thing that you think you're bad at, that is the number one thing that will help you overcome that insecurity. Face it head on. Be bad at it. Then do it again. Be bad at it again. And keep going until you're a little better. And then keep going until you're a lot better. And keep going until eventually you reach the point where you can say, I'm not bad at this. I know I'm good at this. And it took me like 2 years of running a tabletop game and people constantly telling me, we like your story, we like your game, we like the way you've designed everything, to realize that, hey, I actually am good at telling stories. I never thought of that. I was 30 plus years old before I came to that realization, but it's the truth. Actually, to be fair, I was kind of crap at telling stories until I was probably mid-20s anyway, so I haven't been good for that long, but the potential was always there. And for other guys struggling, my advice to you is do the same thing. Do it badly. And tell yourself, I'm bad at this, so keep doing it until it gets better. Don't quit at something just because you're bad at it, because you'll never get good. And if it's something that matters, the only way to do it is to just meet it head on. Do it! That really is just the solution, and there's no easy way around it. It's simple, and it's hard, and it sucks because there's no easy workarounds, no ways to necessarily take it in baby steps. Sometimes you just have to take the step and do the thing. For me, one of the things that I did was I actually did streaming for a little while before I made videos directly. And it helped me get better and more competent in front of a camera and in front of a mic. But ultimately, I still just got stuck at the phase of having to just make the video. And here I am, making a crappy video. Thanks for watching, I guess. But yeah, do the thing. Find the thing that's meaningful to you, and even if you can't find it, find something else that's less meaningful, and just do that. And do things that matter, and keep doing them until you get good at them, and then find a way to make that really something that affects the world in a meaningful way. And I'm not talking about do stuff for like, you have to go out and do charity and you have to donate your time. No. Do that if that's what you want to do, absolutely. But whether it's just like, hey, maybe you want to do woodwork and you're making products for people, good furniture products that people like and they enjoy and that are high quality, and you sell them to people, you make a living off of that, and you're giving people products and furniture that will last them, forget their entire lives. I mean, if you're really good at what you do, you can be making stuff that'll last until their grandkids are growing old, right? And that is having a positive impact on the world. Storytelling, this was for me. The hardest part about storytelling was realizing how impactful it is, until one day I realized everyone enjoys a good story. People perceive the world through the lens of stories. Like whenever people talk about, let me tell you about something that happened to me, and then they just start telling you a story. That's how people perceive the world. Stories are about lives and about how people perceive the world. And I think the stories that you see in a culture, more so than philosophy or psychology, I think stories tell us the most about people. And I have a whole video I could do on that, but because I really start to get into the weeds of human psychology in that one. I got a whole script for it and everything. But ultimately, storytelling does matter. People care about good stories and having good stories to hear. And a good story can literally change a person's life, depending on where they're at, depending on what they're dealing with. If they hear the right story from the right person at the right time, it will completely change their entire outlook on life. It's happened. Many people have told stories about it happening. And whatever you're doing can influence people, whether it be in the practical way of giving them something useful or mentoring people, teaching them, giving them advice. Whatever it is you're doing, do something until you do it well, and then do it in a way that has an impact on people's lives in some way. And once you hit that point, you'll probably be able to look back on all of your past emotional issues and say, I'm not struggling with all those things I used to be struggling with anymore. Because now you're doing what your brain has always been wired to do in the first place, which is to do work and to do the work well. Because that's what being a man is all about. That's all for me. Thanks for watching. And now for the obligatory ending section, where I'm required to tell you to like, subscribe, comment, and all the other things people are supposed to do on social media. Honestly, the biggest thing you could do if you're interested in helping me out is to one, subscribe to the channel, but more importantly than that, share this video with people, especially if you think this is something that can help them, because I don't have an audience. Like, I have 0 viewers, 0 subscribers. If you're watching this, chances are my video is tiny, and I need all the help I can get. So if you like this, please share it. Please, put it out there on whatever other social media platforms. Let people see this. Raise awareness for my channel, because that's the only way I'm going to get people, and that's the only way this channel is going to grow. So everything else, obviously, if you want to comment, I welcome any comments you have. I do want to possibly do some follow-up videos to this, so if you have thoughts and feelings about things that could be added to that follow-up video, or things I could address, maybe clarify things I didn't get into in much detail, because I could honestly talk about this for days, but I had to shorten it, and even in its shortened form, it was close to an hour long. So if you have any comments, please present them. Any thoughts that you have, and whatever else you want to do, subscribe for more. I will be producing more content in the near future and getting it out there. I don't have a timetable for that yet. I'm just getting started. I don't know how long producing this is going to take. I've yet to edit a fully recorded video before, so I don't have any idea what the actual timeline is between recording the video and getting it to its final publishable state. But I will be making more, and I'm going to be working as hard as I can to get as much content out as fast as possible. So you should be seeing more from me soon in the near future. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support, and I will see you next time. Or I suppose I will see the abstract representation of your view in the form of a number on my video. Bye.